All right. So let's start with neurosystem. All right. So types of nervous system. So we have two main types, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Okay. Under the peripheral nervous system, we have another two main parts, somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. In the autonomic nervous system, it divides into three different branches, that is sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So how does this parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves help? We're gonna go back to this picture right here. So parasympathetic nerves, it helps a person constrict pupils, okay? Stimulate saliva, it constricts their airway, it slows down their heartbeat. It inhibits the release of glucose, stimulates activity of the stomach. Okay, so mainly it does, it stimulates, basically stimulates activity of the stomach, it stimulates gallbladder, okay, GI organs, it stimulates activity of intestine. Okay, on the other side, sympathetic nervous system, okay, sympathetic nerves, how does that help? It dilates pupil. Whatever the parasympathetic nerve does, okay, it does opposite to sympathetic. So sympathetic nerves, those are dilates the pupil, inhibits salivation, okay, it's opposite to parasympathetic nerves response. It relaxes the airway, increases heartbeat, inhibits activity of the stomach, it stimulates release of glucose, okay. It secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. It relaxes bladder. So those are the different function of different types of nerves. Now, let's talk about cranial nerves. So total there are 12 cranial nerves, okay? Cranial nerves that arise directly from the brain. Those are these 12 main cranial nerves. There is two nerves, that is olfactory and optic, that arise from the cerebellum or cerebrum, okay? Whereas all the remaining that emerge from the brainstem. So there are 12 cranial nerves. There is olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducent, facial, acoustic. So all of these, there is total 12, okay? Which one is very important for extraocular muscle movement? 3, 4, and 6. Which one is important for the smell? Olfactory. Which one is important for the eyes? 2 eyes, so cranial nerve number 2, okay? Which one is for ears? Cranial nerve number 8, okay? Which one is for face? Number 7, okay? Which one is for tongue? That is number 9. Which one is for swallow and gag reflex? That is 9 and 10, okay? Which one is for shoulder movement? Shrug your shoulder. Spinal accessories, that is number 11. And number 12, that is hypoglossal, stick your tongue out. So that is number 12. The main very important one is 3, 4, and 6. It's important for extraocular muscle movement. Now let's talk about headaches. So there are some red flags when we talk about headaches. That stands for SNOOP. Okay, SNOOP means SNOOP. S means systemic symptoms. That means like if patient has headaches going on, okay, and they have some kind of systemic symptoms, fever, fatigue, all that. Along with they have headaches, what do you think about? Maybe they have some kind of infection, okay, maybe they have cancer, maybe they have meningitis, okay. So they have headaches with systemic symptoms. N means they have some kind of neurological signs. They have altered mental status and they have headache. What does that mean? They have headache and they have altered mental status. That means probably they have, some kind of lesion in their brain, some kind of mass, okay, maybe TIA episode or stroke, encephalitis, anything that is neurological sign and symptoms with headache, okay. Now onset of the headache, it's very important, like all of a sudden they have this headache going on all of a sudden. That is acute onset, abrupt onset, okay, and they have this thunderclap headache, severe headache, worst headache ever in their life. What do you think about that? Is subarachnoid hemorrhage. Age is very important as well. They have new onset of headache and age is after 50. It can be, okay, not 100% sure, it can be temporal arteritis, okay. Some patients have, it's called papilloedema. They have prior history of headaches, now they have papilloedema. What does that mean? There can be many different conditions associated with papilloedema. Maybe they have subarachnoid hemorrhage, okay, maybe they have uncontrolled high blood pressure, and they also have intracranial pressure high. So papilloedema doesn't mean that they have ocular pressure high. This name, it sounded like they have this eye related condition going on, but it's not. There is something messed up in the brain, okay, and that's why they have intracranial pressure high. Now let's talk about migraines. So what is migraines? Migraine is basically headache, okay, and especially it hurts like one side, unilateral headache. There are two main types of migraine. One is with aura and the other one is without aura. So basically this is headache. One side of the head hurts. It's throbbing, it's pulsating headache, unilateral headache. Lasts long, somewhere between 4 hours to 72 hours. And it comes and goes, okay? 4 hours to 72 hours. That is constant. Then it's gonna subside and then patient can have another episode of migraine. So what is the difference between with aura and without aura? What are they talking about here? With aura, that means patient knows that, oh my God, headache is coming. They know. It gives them some kind of sign and symptoms. Either they have scotoma, either they have halos around the lights, either they have nausea, vomiting, okay, either they have hemiparesis, half of the body paralyzing before headache starts. So those are the sign and symptoms. It begins like 30 minutes prior having headaches. They have all those signs and symptoms and they know that yes, their headache is coming. That is migraine with aura. Migraine without aura, that means they are not having any kind of symptoms and they are just having plain old unilateral pulsatile throbbing headaches. They also have sometimes photophobia, nausea, vomiting as well. That is migraine without aura, okay? There are certain triggers for migraine. Pregnancy is the triggers for migraine. Certain food is triggers. Chocolate, cheese, MSG, nitrates, alcohol, all of those are triggers for migraine. So what do we do? There is a treatment. There is two types of treatment. Acute, that is like whenever patient have headaches, they can take it right away and it's gonna start helping them within 15 minutes. So that is for acute headaches, acute treatment. And there is another treatment where patient takes this medication if they have more than 2 episodes of migraine headaches in 1 month. If they had to take this acute treatment, maybe like 2 times or 3 times in 1 month, then they need prophylaxis treatment. That is on daily basis they take, okay? So acute treatment. When person is having headache, what kind of medication we can give them? They can have triptans. That's how we turn off their headache right away. So how do we turn off their headache? Triptan, okay? TT, triptans. So they can take triptans. They can also take ergotamines. They can also take NSAIDs. But number one choice is triptan, sumatriptan. That's one of the names. Amitriptan. Okay, so those are the triptans. They don't have to mix this medication, or they cannot take MAOI drugs, okay, while they are taking triptans, because MAOI drug, it's gonna increase the level of triptan in the body. So we make sure they cannot mix this MAOI with triptan. So for acute treatment, they can take triptans, they can take NSAIDs, they can take ergotamines, everything, okay? If they are taking more than 2 doses of triptan in 1 month, okay, then it's time to give them prophylaxis treatment. That is preventative therapy for migraine. So which one is preventative therapy? Which drug we can use on daily basis? We can give them propranolol, we can give them calcium channel blocker, we can give them beta blockers, anti-seizure medication, that is Topamax, all of these. Very important drug, that is prophylaxis treatment for migraine, that is TCA, tricyclic antidepressant. That is amitriptyline, long name, nortriptyline, okay? So don't get confused with triptan and triptyline. Triptyline is a long name, it's for preventative therapy, okay? Triptan is for short acting, that's how you turn off their headaches. Now, let's talk about cluster headache. So what is cluster headache? This person who is male person, and they have this quality about this headache. Female person is having headache, that is most of the time that is migraine, okay? Male person is having headache, that is unilateral, and they have some kind of eye related symptoms, that is cluster headache. So what is the main sign and symptoms? They have this severe eye piercing pain behind their one eye. It's just one eye. They also have tearing, runny nose. They also have Horner syndrome, that is also related to the eye. They have ptosis and miosis. So what is that? Ptosis. Ptosis means drooping of the eyelid. Their eyelid is just dropping, okay, dropping of the eyelid. And then miosis, that is constricted pupil. Their pupil is getting constricted, that is miosis. So when they have these clustered headaches going on, they are hurting, okay, one side of the head hurts, and they have some eye related symptoms. What is the choice of treatment? 100% oxygen via face mask. That is the choice of treatment. You can also use 4% lidocaine intranasal. But here is your clue. Male patient, unilateral headache, eye-related symptoms. What is that? That is cluster headache, okay? Choice of treatment is 100% oxygen via face mask. Now we have tension headache. Tension headache means it's happening because of the stress. It's happening because of the fatigue, okay? So what is the classic with this tension headache? They have this bilateral lobes, frontal lobe is hurting, okay? Bilateral, and they have this band-like headache. That is tension headache. Pain in the frontal and occipital region. It's a band-like distribution. So stress can make this worse, fatigue, noise, all of these. And this is most common type of headaches that everybody may have so far experienced. So that is tension headache. So for tension headache, what kind of treatment? They can take NSAIDs, Tylenol, hot shower, massage, anything, it's gonna help. Especially stress reduction, exercise, yoga, massage, everything's gonna help. Now, next one is trigeminal neuralgia. So what is trigeminal neuralgia? So this is the compression of cranial nerve number 5, okay? So cranial nerve number 5, it's compression. So why is it getting compressed? Maybe there is some inflammation going on. Maybe they have some kind of tumor going on. It's pressurizing against the nerve, okay? And that's why patient has sign and symptoms. What kind of sign and symptoms? They have the stabbing pain at one side, and especially it's gonna be right side. Intense, it's very brief, it's a sharp stabbing pain, one side of the cheek, especially it's gonna be at the right side. It's precipitated by tapping on the nerve. It gets worse when chewing something or jaw movement. It has high rate of spontaneous remission. It goes away and it can come back as well. So what do you have to do? You can order MRI. So you are not ordering MRI, to check for compression of the cranial nerve, to check for inflammation. Okay, you are ordering MRI to check for the tumor, to check for any kind of bone growth. Okay, not for inflammation. MRI to rule out tumor. That's the reason. So what is the choice of treatment? So easy way to remember this treatment, you can say trigeminal neuralgia instead of neuralgia. Trigeminal neuralgia, TD. Okay, that means Tegretol and Dilantin. You can give either or, not both. It's Tegretol or Dilantin. So trigeminal neuralgia, TD, Tegretol or Dilantin. Or you can remember as a TTT. Okay, that means trigeminal neuralgia. Other name for trigeminal neuralgia is Ticdolorex, and treatment is Tegretol. So TTT, you can remember that, or TD. Now, next one is temporal arteritis. So what is that? It's also known as giant cell arteritis. This is the inflammation of the artery in the brain, in the head. Okay, so that is temporal arteritis. It's a cord-like structure on the frontal lobe, that is temporal artery. There is a redness going on, there is a pain going on, it's tender, there is a induration going on. Okay, so that is temporal arteritis. What type of labs do we order? When anytime patient has any kind of inflammatory response going on in the body, they're gonna have ESR and C-reactive protein that goes high. So labs, ESR and C-reactive protein, it's gonna be elevated. So how do we diagnose this patient? Yes, physical exam, very important. But what is the gold standard? Gold standard is punch biopsy. Punch biopsy is the gold standard definitive diagnostic test. And what is the choice of treatment? High dose steroids, 40 to 60 milligram daily for 7 to 10 days. So gold standard is temporal artery biopsy, that's the gold standard. And choice of treatment is high dose steroids for 10 days. Now, next condition is polymyalgia rheumatica. So polymyalgia rheumatica, this is the bone condition, okay? Bone issue. So obviously, when somebody has bone issue going on, you're gonna give them treatment for long period of time, okay? But what is going on here? Polymyalgia rheumatica. In the morning, every day, patient's gonna have stiffness. They're gonna hurt. Where they gonna hurt? Shoulder pain, hip pain, pelvic girdle pain, neck hurts, torso hurts, everything they have pain everywhere. Shoulder, neck, hip, torso, pelvic girdle, everywhere in the morning they're hurting. That is polymyalgia rheumatica. You can order ESR, it's gonna be elevated. C-reactive protein, it's gonna be elevated as well. So what is the choice of treatment? Low dose steroids, because when we give steroids, we can't give steroids for long period of time. High dose, okay, we can do low dose, long period of time. So here, low dose steroids for 9 to 12 months. Person who has polymyalgia rheumatica, they are also high risk for giant cell arteritis as well. So polymyalgia rheumatica is associated with giant cell arteritis as well. Okay, so here's the thing. Temporal arteritis, you are giving them treatment steroids, that is for 10 days, right? So this is easy for you to remember. For PMR, you are giving them treatment for 10 months. because this is bone issues. Okay, so that's how you can remember this. Next one is Bell's palsy. So what is going on with Bell's palsy? This is the dysfunction of cranial nerve number 7. So why does this person's, have this dysfunction going of the nerve? Maybe there's some kind of viral infection. Maybe this is autoimmune. Okay, maybe they have tumor going on or mastoid infection. So you have to rule out CVA as well, because this patient presents with signs and symptoms of, it's kind of like stroke-like symptoms. Person who has Bell's palsy, they present with stroke-like symptoms. So we have to rule out CVA. We also have to rule out mastoid infection as well. So what is the main sign and symptoms they have? They have facial paralysis. One side of the face, it's facial paralysis because nerve is not working. And that paralysis is progressively getting worse within 24 hours. They also have difficulty chewing and swallowing food. Okay. They also have this one side of the eyelid that is affected eye, it stays open because nerve is dead. It's completely not working. Okay. So nerve is not working. They're going to keep the eyelid open. So when their eyelid stays open, what do you worry about? Corneal abrasion. Okay. Corneal abrasion. So that's why the choice of treatment is we have to patch their eye. Affected side, we have to patch their eye at the night time. Okay. So what is the choice of treatment? High dose steroids for 10 days. Okay, high dose steroids for 10 days. Next, TIA. So TIA, that is transient ischemic attack. So this is focal ischemia. Just a short period of time. They had blockages in the artery just for a few seconds and then it opened up. They had blood circulation again, okay? But when they had blockages, they had those symptoms. They either had slurred speech, they had facial droop, their tongue was deviating. So all those symptoms just for a short period of time. Patient was confused after the episode. So that is TIA symptoms. That's just a focal ischemia just for a short period of time. So what do? We refer this patient to the ER. They can get CT scan done first, then MRI as well within 24 hours. Up to 20% of the patient who has TIA, they most likely have stroke within 90 days. Okay, so that's why it's very important, as soon as they have TIA, we have to get the ball rolling. Okay, we have to figure it out, like why in the world this patient had TIA. We are doing all this to prevent major episode of CVA. So what is CVA? CVA is damage is done. Okay, so that is embolic or hemorrhagic. There are two types, embolic or hemorrhagic. So they have this artery blockages, okay, and there is a window period. Patient goes to the ER, they have this paralysis going on or numbness, okay, and patient goes to the ER. If this is 4-hour window, then they're gonna give them TPA, and after that patient feels good, okay, they can able to move their extremity. But if that 4-hour window period is gone, then patient stays with that damage part in the brain forever, needs more rehab, needs more occupational therapy and stuff like that, maybe more than like 1 year. Okay, so once damage is done, it's done. That is after 4 hours of that embolic event. Hemorrhagic stroke, where their blood vessels, it gets busted open. That is hemorrhagic stroke. That is one thing you need to remember. When somebody has hemorrhagic stroke, okay, we are not ordering CT scan with contrast. Anyways, we don't know what type of stroke they have when patient presents with stroke-like symptoms. So when we order CT scan, it has to be CT without contrast. Because if they have hemorrhagic stroke, blood vessel is open, okay, that contrast can leak into the brain as well. So that's why hemorrhagic stroke, IV contrast is contraindicated. So anytime they have TIA or CVA symptoms, we are referring this patient to the ER. There are multiple reasons to have stroke. Number one is AFib, irregular heartbeat. They can have cardiac emboli event, irregular heartbeat, AFib. Either they have carotid artery disease or carotid artery stenosis. Okay, that's another reason to have stroke. Now, next one is chronic subdural hematoma. So hematoma, this is the bleed between dura and subarachnoid membrane. Okay, so dura and subarachnoid membrane, there is a blood clot, there is a big old hematoma going on. Okay, so when somebody has hematoma going on, what kind of signs and symptoms they have? So here, history taking is very important. Maybe they, hit their head, they involve in car accident, or somebody hit them in the head. So those are some causes where they hit their head. Okay, at that time they thought that they were fine, but after a couple of days later, now they're having like all of a sudden cognitive impairment. They started acting confused, okay, little bit somnolent, confusion, apathy, all those signs and symptoms. It doesn't happen after the injury right away. It takes at least like couple of days, because this hematoma, it's gradually increased, and that's where patient has signs and symptoms. Number one sign and symptoms is cognitive impairment and confusion. So they have also headaches as well. Okay, confusion, they have headaches, cognitive impairment, occasional seizure activity. So what do? We refer this patient to the ER. Next one is subarachnoid hemorrhage. So what is subarachnoid hemorrhage? This is also happened because of the head injury. What is the sign and symptoms? Worst headache ever. That is your clue. Worst headache ever. Thunderclap headache, sudden onset, severe headache. It also comes with sign and symptoms: photophobia, Brudzinski sign, Kerning sign, all those. So main clue here is worst headache ever. So what do? Treatment is refer this patient to the ER because this is medical emergency. Now next one is carpal tunnel syndrome. So what is happening here? Carpal tunnel syndrome. So basically there is a medial nerve, okay? Medial nerve at the wrist area. And that medial nerve is getting compressed. And getting compressed because of the tendon, okay? So there is a tendon and it's pressurizing this medial nerve. This person is probably using the extremity, a whole lot, the hands. Maybe their job is to do typing all day, or they are using computer all day long. They're using their fingers, okay? So when they use their fingers and they have this constant finger movement, they can have this carpal tunnel syndrome, where the tendon is pressurizing to the nerve. And that's why patient has symptoms. When anytime the nerve is getting compressed, what kind of sign and symptoms they have? Number one sign, numbness. And it's this condition, they have gradual onset of numbness. Tingling, okay, they have numbness, they have tingling. In which finger they have numbness and tingling? So it affects their thumb, index finger, and middle finger. Okay, so thumb, excuse me, thumb, index finger, and middle finger. So those three areas, they have tingling and numbness. So when they have tingling and numbness in those first three digits, it's gonna affect their hand grip as well. If they're holding something, it's gonna slide down because they feel numb. Okay. The other term, it's called acroparesthesia. What is acroparesthesia? That means person is, because of the numbness and tingling and burning, they wake up at night. That's called acroparesthesia. They wake up at night because of the numbness. So when person has this numbness, they present to you. What do you do? What test do you do in the office? So you can do, it's called Tinel test, okay, and Fennel test or Falane sign. So what is that? Tinel test, that means you are taping on the nerve. You are taping on the wrist area, okay, and they have this radiating, shooting numbness in those first 3 digits. That means they have possible carpal tunnel syndrome going on. And Phelan test, what is Phelan test or Phelan sign positive? That means if you ask patient to do upside down prayer, okay, upside down prayer, as soon as they hold their hand steadily, they can hold it for maybe 15 seconds, that's fine, but they cannot hold it for a whole minute. If they hold it for 1 minute, they have severe pain and they have numbness. So that's called Phelan test positive, upside down prayer, and they cannot do it for a whole minute. So if they have Phelan test positive and Tinel test positive, that means they probably have carpal tunnel syndrome. So what do you do? Diagnostic test. You can do EMG studies. You can also do nerve conduction studies. Once those are positive, you can refer this patient to vascular surgeon for carpal tunnel release surgery. Advise patient to decrease all those repetitive motion activity. There is a steroid injection. It can help as well, decrease inflammatory response. And splinting for short period of time, it can help as well. Next one is vertigo. So what is vertigo? So vertigo is not a disease. It's just a sign and symptoms. Okay, it's the sign and symptoms. It's not a disease, it's not a diagnosis. It's the symptoms. So what can cause patient to have vertigo? There are 2 main types of vertigo, peripheral vertigo and central vertigo. So what is peripheral vertigo? Peripheral vertigo, it involves the vestibular system. That means what? Ears, okay, mainly related to ears. They also have nausea, vomiting, and it's recurrent. Peripheral vertigo is just for short period of time and it's recurrent. It comes and goes and lasts long, less than 1 minute, and comes back after another. So it's just a short acting vertigo, basically. And there is another vertigo that's called central vertigo. And what is that? It involves the brain. It involves the brain stem or cerebellum. It's all about brain issues, okay? That's why it's central vertigo. And it lasts long for minutes to hours. Maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. That's a long period of time. And then it doesn't come back often. But when it comes back, it lasts long forever. That is central vertigo. So what are some examples of peripheral vertigo? It's all coming from the ear, okay? That is peripheral vertigo. BPPV, Meniere's disease, ototoxicity, canal dehiscence syndrome, okay? So those are the peripheral cause of vertigo. Then we have central vertigo. Central vertigo, migraine headaches, they can have vertigo as well. Multiple sclerosis, hemorrhage, vertebral artery dissection, neoplasm, cerebral hemorrhage. So all of those are central vertigo. Now, let's talk about BPPV. What is BPPV? Benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, BPPV. So what is the main sign and symptoms of BPPV? First of all, what is happening in BPPV? So in the ear, okay, there's the canal, and in the canal, we have, it's called otoconia. As you can see in this picture, those yellow color looking debris, okay, those called otoconia. And it's there, it's packed, okay, it doesn't move, it's just packed, it's sealed. But then once in a while, that otoconia, it moves, it comes out, just maybe a few particles, it turns loose, then it comes out. As soon as it comes out, there is a fluid in that canal, and it starts floating in the fluid, okay. Fluid in the ear, it maintains the balance, right? This otoconia, it's a calcium debris, it comes loose and starts floating in the fluid. As soon as we change the position, this thing is moving as well and making the person dizzy. Is that calcium debris that makes the person dizzy because it moves with the fluid. Our ear interprets that this person, okay, changed the position, and this debris is making it worse inside because this debris is dancing inside. And that's why this person is feeling dizziness. So dizziness is triggered because of the head movement. So how do we fix this? Do you think like if we prescribe maclizine, it's gonna help? Well, it's gonna help some, but it's gonna mask the effect of dizziness. It's not gonna take care of the problem. It's not gonna put this debris back into the place. It's just gonna mask the effect of dizziness. That's about it. So how do we put this debris back into the place? What do we do? First of all, we have to examine the patient to know that yes, these debris are out. Okay. So what type of test do we do? It's called Dix-Hall-Pikes maneuver. Okay, Dix-Hall-Pikes maneuver. And what is that? Basically, person, you let them lay down, and then there is you move their head towards the right side, then left side, and because you are moving that head, they gonna have dizziness. Number one thing. They also gonna have vomiting. Number two. And number three, they gonna have nystagmus, that is flickering of the eye. As soon as you see like they are having dizziness, vomiting, nystagmus, that's it. They have BPPV. Now your diagnosis is done. How do you fix this? Yes, to prevent all those signs and symptoms temporarily, you can prescribe them maclizine. But your job is to put this debris back into the place. You can do Apley's maneuver. One time Apley's maneuver is not going to help the patient. You have to do it frequently. Every time patient comes and visits you, you have to do Apley's maneuver if they are not better. If you don't want to do it every visit, you can refer this patient to physical therapy and they'll do it for you. Every time when they do this Apley's maneuver, okay, they move the head certain directions where this debris can go back to the place. And as soon as it goes back, patient can stop having dizziness. Okay, so that is BPPV. Now next one is essential tremors. So essential tremors, what type of tremor do they have? Those called action tremors. Okay, it's activated by voluntary movement. It's affecting their head, their voice, their face, their trunk, their hands, and their arms. So that is called voluntary movement. So somebody is trying to picking up the coffee mug, okay, or they're trying to hold something, or glass, okay, they are trying to hold something, but then their hand is started shaking because this is voluntary movement. They think that yes, I'm going to do this. They try to do it and then they have tremors. That's called essential tremors. It's affecting their hands, arm, head, voice, face, and trunk. They don't have any other neurological signs. Okay, only thing they have is voluntary muscle movement, which is tremoring. So what is the choice of treatment? Propranolol. Propranolol choice of treatment, which is beta blocker, non-cardioselective. We're not gonna do metoprolol and carvedilol here. Propranolol is the choice of treatment. Essential tremors. Next one is Parkinson's disease. This guy also have tremors, but those are resting tremors, pin rolling tremors. Person can have chronic progressive disease. It's chronic and it's progressive and it can get worse. It increases with the age. What other signs and symptoms they have? Bradykinesia, pin rolling tremor, shuffle gait, mask-like face. It's happening because of the depletion of the dopamine. Okay. So loss of substantia nigra. What is that? As you can see in this picture, the middle one purple color looking that has two white arrows. Okay. Those arrows that called substantia nigra. And it's degenerating, okay, and that's why patient has depletion of dopamine and they have all those symptoms as well. So 70% of the patient who has Parkinson's disease, they have autoimmune disease. Okay, Parkinson's disease, 70% of the time that is autoimmune. So what is the choice of treatment? Levodopa, carbidopa, okay. Multiple sclerosis. What is MS? MS, they have this demyelination of the myelin sheath. When myelin sheath is intact, okay, there are neurons and two neurons in the middle, it connects with myelin sheath, okay. That's how they pass the messages. But this myelin sheath is messed up. It's called demyelination of myelin sheath, as you can see in this picture. When somebody has demyelination of the myelin sheath, what kind of signs and symptoms they can have? It's MS. M, that is musculoskeletal symptoms. S, that is sensory neuro symptoms. MS. They have musculoskeletal symptoms and sensory neuro symptoms as well. So MS. Onset is between 15 to 50 years. They have relapse and remission as well. So what is the choice of treatment? You can order MRI and you refer this patient to neurologist. This patient has motor symptoms, visual loss, diplopia, gait disturbances, muscles weakness, everything's going on because it's muscles and sensory neuro symptoms. Next one is myasthenia gravis. What is that? Myasthenia gravis, this is autoimmune disease. They have gradual changes of muscles weakness. It's not sensory issues, it's only muscles. Myasthenia gravis, only muscles. They have gradual destruction of acetylcholine receptors. So what is that? Acetylcholine receptors. So we have this hormone, okay, acetylcholine. That acetylcholine, it binds to its receptor. As you can see, the blue color line, okay, that is the receptor site. And on top, you have this acetylcholine that comes down and binds to the receptor. But what is happening? This Y, that is antibody, okay, that antibody comes in the middle, does not let this acetylcholine to bind to its receptor. And that's why they have gradual onset of muscles weakness. So this is autoimmune disease, gradual destruction of acetylcholine receptors because antibody comes in the picture. They have muscles weakness. So what do? We refer this patient to the neurologist. They can prescribe, it's called cholinesterase inhibitors. Those are pyridostigmins and neostigmins. Those medication, it doesn't reverse the process. The damage is done, it's done. So how does this medication is gonna help? So this medication actually prevents the progression of the disease. It's not gonna get the patient better. Whatever the symptoms they had, they're gonna have it. But then it prevents the progression. Next one is dementia. So there is 4 total types of dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term. Under this umbrella, we have 4 different persons. We have Alzheimer's disease, we have vascular disease, we have Lewy body dementia, and we have frontotemporal dementia. Alzheimer's disease, what is that? Loss of executive function. They used to, work in the big company as a CEO. They can't do it anymore. Loss of executive function. They don't know how to open up the car. They don't know how to open up the door, okay? They don't know how to operate the computer. Whatever the executive function, it's gone. They don't know how to do it. Loss of executive function, that is Alzheimer's disease. Type 2, that is vascular dementia. And what is that? Vascular dementia, that means this person had uncontrolled diabetes, uncontrolled high blood pressure throughout the life. And now they have memory issues. That's called vascular dementia. Advanced age, high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking. Next one is Lewy body dementia. What is that? So this person here, they don't have any Parkinson's, okay, but they have Parkinson's related symptoms. Bradykinesia, pin rolling, tremor, shuffle gait, everything. And they also have some psychic symptoms. Hallucination, delusional. So they have Parkinson's related symptoms, but no Parkinson's, and some psychic symptoms, that is Lewy body dementia. Before you say that, okay, before you stamp that, okay, you have dementia, okay, what do you have to order? First of all, you have to rule out other conditions where can, in those conditions, patient may become confused. Certain conditions, that is UTI, pneumonia, B12 deficiency, 3rd stage of syphilis. Okay, you have to rule out everything. HIV, rule out everything before you say that you have dementia. Okay, so you can order CBC, CMP, urine analysis, chest X-ray, RPR for syphilis, screening test, HIV, thyroid stimulating hormone, B12 level, everything. Order everything. Once everything is negative, all those testing perfectly normal, then you can do, it's called mini mental state exam. Mini mental state exam, where you can check there for language, orientation, recall, everything. Basically, are checking their memory. Okay, they are checking everything. If they fail that exam, okay, exam basically you're asking them questions. So if they fail this mini mental state exam, okay, how do you know that they fail? There are numbers. The total score is 30. If they score less than 24, that's suggestive of dementia. So once you order all this blood work, everything else is negative, you do mini mental state exam, score less than 24, that means they got dementia. Okay. Next one is delirium. So there is a difference between dementia and delirium. Dementia, again, once damage is done, it's done. Delirium, it's look like it's damage, okay, but patient can come back. How do they come back? If you address underlying issue, if you remove the cause of that delirium, if you treat the illness, patient can come back. This is just a short period of time. It's a reversible condition. They're acting cuckoo just for a short period of time because they're doped up with the narcotics, pain medication, benzodiazepam on board, hypnotics, all this. Maybe they have metabolic encephalopathy, UTI, pneumonia. If you take care of all those issues, then patient is back to normal. They're not confused anymore. So delirium, it's reversible. You remove the cause, treat the illness, patient is back. Then acute bacterial meningitis, inflammation of the meninges. What kind of signs and symptoms patient have? Headaches, photophobia, Brudzinski sign positive, Kerning sign positive, confusion. Most of the time it's seen in the pediatric patient. So how do we know? Diagnostic test is lumbar puncture. We refer this patient to the ER, they do lumbar puncture. If it's positive for protein and glucose, that means this is classic meningitis. They can also do multiple different tests, CT scan, then MRI, then blood work, CBC, blood culture, everything. But what is very important? Most of the time it's happening to the pediatric patient, okay? So we have to treat close contact family member. If mom and dad taking care of the child, we have to treat them. If grandparents taking care of the child, we have to treat them. Prophylaxis treatment for close contact family member, that is rifampin or rosafin. It's RR. Rifampin or rosafin. That is also known as ceftriaxone. All right, so that's about it for neuro.